You want me to review the new Scream movie? My mom and dad are gonna be so mad at me! Merry meet witches, I'm Gory B Movie, and today I'm sharing all of my spoiler-free thoughts on the new Scream movie. When the original Scream came out in 1996, all of our favorite slasher franchises had been run into the ground with lackluster sequels, and there hadn't been a great horror movie in the cinema for at least a few years. Then Scream came along and reinvigorated the genre. I saw it on opening day and was blown away. It remains one of my all-time favorite movies. Helmed by the late director Wes Craven, the series has maintained a rare level of quality and consistency that you just don't see in a lot of horror franchises. I was initially skeptical about a Scream movie without Craven and writer Kevin Williamson. Craven's stylish visuals and Williamson's sharp writing have made the franchise what it is. Arguably, the weakest entry to date is Scream 3. Previously, it was the only one to not feature Williamson as the writer, and it showed. Then I heard that Radio Silence would be directing the latest installment. They previously directed Ready or Not in 2019, which was one of my favorite films of that year. Williamson says that he's ready to turn the franchise over to someone else. However, he liked James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick's pitch for a new movie and signed on to produce their screenplay. Busick previously co-wrote Ready or Not. Vanderbilt has penned a number of screenplays. Some, like Zodiac and The Rundown, are great. Others, like Independence Day Resurgence, not so much. The trailer and the marketing campaign for Scream 2022 were awesome, and the early screening reviews were glowing. Many said that this was the best Scream movie since the original. That's a high bar to set, but I couldn't help but be excited. The movie opens like the original did, with a phone call from Ghostface. The opening scene is great. Jenna Ortega, who plays Tara, really sells the fear of this intense attack. She's incredible. I loved her in You Season 2, The Babysitter Killer Queen, and I'm looking forward to seeing her play Wednesday in Tim Burton's upcoming series. Roger L. Jackson is also back as the voice of Ghostface. As he did in the first Scream movie, he effortlessly navigates the conversation from friendly to menacing. He's given more to do with his voiceover in this film, and he's fantastic. I love the way he toys with his victims. Then we're introduced to a new class of characters. Tara's older sister Sam, played by Melissa Barrera, is the new main character. She's a runaway who previously left town and started a new life. She returns to Woodsboro and teams up with Tara's friends to unmask Ghostface. One of these days, you just know it's gonna be Old Man Smithers. I mean, hell, Shaggy's in these movies. I really liked Sam's backstory, but I felt that it wasn't explored enough.
Hello, Samantha.
Who is this?
Someone who knows your little secret.
Barrera does a decent job, but her performance lacks energy up until the final act. She feels distant. I liked her, but I didn't empathize with her. She's tough, but she lacks vulnerability. The main character of any horror movie clues us into how we should feel about the other characters. Sam doesn't know or really care about any of the characters in this film outside of her sister and her boyfriend Richie. What's more, the younger cast of characters are suspicious of Sam from the start. Not that I blame them, Sam is sketchy. She abandoned Tara once before, and they have no reason to believe that she won't do it again. That could be interesting, but the movie doesn't trust Sam either. We're given many scenes that are intended to make us doubt and suspect Sam. We can't root for a character that we also suspect of being the killer. The relationships between characters are what has made this franchise so great. We have watched the bonds between Sidney Gale and Dewey grow over 4 movies. They're heroic, and we've seen them risk their lives for each other countless times. The new characters in this movie didn't make that much of an impression on me. They're essentially just lesser versions of characters that we've already seen in the previous movies. Watching them just made me miss characters like Randy, Tatum, and Kirby more. The cast is talented, and the characters are funny, but I never got the impression that these kids liked each other. They're accusing each other of being Ghostface before the rules of a requel are even established. Sure, we've seen that in the other films, but never to this extent.
Got bruises.
It's from football practice.
These characters are never afraid for each other. They're afraid of each other. There are exceptions, namely the 2 sisters and Sheriff Judy Hicks and her son Wes. It was great to see Marley Shelton again and her lemon squares, which don't taste like ass. I was so happy that she got promoted to sheriff, And I really felt the love that she had for her son Wes, played by Dylan Minnette. I also really liked Sam's boyfriend Richie, played by Jack Quaid. He is great on The Boys, and he is equally funny and charismatic in this role. He's a great audience replacement character. He spends the entire movie marathoning the Stab films, and as he learns about the franchise, so do we. Eventually, the gang seeks out the help of Dewey. He's retired and still recovering from his numerous run-ins with Ghostface. David Arquette gives an incredible performance. He's no longer the bumbling sidekick, now he's a weathered slasher veteran. In a few of the previous sequels, he seemed almost like a cartoon character. He'd nearly die in every movie and then pop up in the next one as though nothing happened. In this film, we finally see the effect that these attacks have had on him and his relationships. It was also good to see Gail again, though I do wish the movie gave her more to do. That said, it completed her arc well. She's really matured from her days as a ruthless journalist, and the movie did a good job of showing just how much she has changed. I wish I could say the same about Sydney, but she really doesn't show up until the third act. Her story has been told, and she's moved on. There was really no reason for her to be in this movie. Sydney is my favorite final girl, so it pains me to say it, but that third act would have been stronger without her. Neve Campbell doesn't even seem like she wants to be in this movie. Not that I blame her, her role is essentially a trimmed down version of what she already did in Scream 4. And that's not the only thing that reminded me of Scream 4. Scream 2022 plays on being a requel, but it covers much of the same territory that Scream 4 did with its satire on reboots and remakes. The key differences are that a requel brings back legacy characters and uses the same title.
Working on less of a shriekquel and more of a screamake.
Copyrighted terms, by the way.
Aside from the title, this is something that Scream 4 already did, and did better. Specifically, the film comments on reimaginings of classics like David Gordon Green's Halloween, something the new characters have experienced firsthand with the Stab films. Namely the latest Stab 8, which was a disappointing requel of the original. This does lead to some interesting conversation about toxic fandoms, namely fans that feel like their childhood could be ruined by a disappointing sequel or remake. It also calls into question elevated horror, a genre that by definition is supposedly above subgenres of horror like slashers and creature features. These discussions raise great points and are one of the strongest aspects of the film. Unfortunately, the movie falls into the same trappings as the films that it's satirizing. It's a gorier Scream for sure, and I enjoy the bloodshed, but for me the Scream films have never really been about the kills. They're suspenseful, and there are some horrifying moments, but this isn't the Friday the 13th franchise. I'm here for the characters, not the body count. Scream 2022 opens some great discussions about horror. Unfortunately, the film is at times too self-aware. It relies heavily on fan service. The pacing is quick, sometimes to the film's detriment. It rushes through any attempts at characterization to get to the next kill or reference. At times, it feels less like a satire and more like the kinds of derivative remakes that it's attempting to poke fun at. The atmosphere is completely different. It's much darker and mean-spirited. It has comedic moments, but it's not as much fun as the previous Scream films. I miss the vibrant colors and upbeat energy that Craven brought to this franchise. His films had the levity of a teen comedy, but still managed to fulfill the expectations of a slasher. That's not to say that the change of atmosphere was a total miss for me. There are places where it works really well. Namely, the kills. There is one set to Nick Cave's Red Right Hand that was a nice homage to John Carpenter's Christine. Ghostface is more formidable than ever. Sure, it's always been a different person under the mask, but this character is known for getting their ass kicked. This Ghostface is in control. Every kill in this movie is visceral. There are also a few that took me by surprise, which is something that rarely happens with these films. I also want to commend the movie for having a shower scene featuring a male character. Sexuality and nudity have always been a slasher staple, but it tends to be pretty one-sided. Shower scenes in slashers have become more about showcasing female nudity than building suspense.
What does that have to do with the plot of the story, her being butt-ass naked?
This shower scene was a nice homage to Psycho. The scene was executed well and reminded us that we're never more vulnerable than we are when we're taking a shower. I also applaud the diverse cast. The first film was a bunch of rich white kids.
It's a dumbass white movie about some dumbass white girls getting their white asses cut the fuck up, okay?
The second introduced a few black characters, but Sydney's best friend Hallie fell into the black best friend trope, something that we've seen in movies like I Still Know What You Did Last Summer and A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4.
Can you not tell me the whole story? I'm your best friend!
This trope of characters exists only to build the main character up. Scream 5 prominently features Black and Latino characters. There's also a queer character that's treated as a real person and not a punchline, something that could have been done better in Scream 4.
You can't, there's rules. I'm gay. I mean, if it helps.
But let's talk about the ending. I won't tell you what happens, but I will tell you that between Danny and I, we were able to figure it out. That said, I don't think that this film's predictable. I was genuinely shocked and surprised by how balls to the wall that finale was. It's one hell of a climax. I mentioned that the writers got a bit overzealous with the references, but they do show genuine respect and admiration for the genre. There's a monologue in the movie explaining why requels rub fans the wrong way. They explained that slasher films are often dismissed as being pointless, as Sydney described them in the first film.
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
But to many fans like myself, these films hold a special place in our hearts. As someone who loves slashers and B movies, this really resonated with me. Scream 2022 has its issues, but it is a loving tribute to Wes Craven's work. These are just my first impressions of the movie. I liked it, but I didn't love it like I expected to. I'm hoping that I'll enjoy it more on a rewatch. It wouldn't be the first time that I was initially disappointed with a Scream movie and ended up coming around to it. I wasn't a fan of Scream 2 when it came out, and now it's one of my favorites in the franchise. My advice to you is to not expect this movie to be as good as the original. Don't even expect this to be as good as the sequels. I bought into the hype, and as you know, that way leads to disappointment. I recommend this movie to anyone looking for a brutal teen slasher, and if you're a Scream fan, go into this with reasonable expectations. Scream is one of my all-time favorite horror franchises, and I'm glad I saw it in the theater. However, if you're on the fence about seeing this, I recommend that you stream it. The movie is set to stream on Paramount Plus on February 28th. This movie is doing very well at the box office, so I have no doubt that there's going to be a sequel. And despite my grievances, I'm looking forward to revisiting these characters again in Scream 6. But now I want to hear from you. Have you seen Scream 2022? What'd you think of it? Let me know in those comments down below. And for the sake of those who haven't seen the movie yet, let's keep the comment section spoiler free. Also, stay tuned for more Scream videos. I'll be posting a Scream 2022 spoiler discussion that I did with my husband Danny Nightmare from Horror Addicts, and a Scream ranking including all 5 movies very soon. I want to thank the B Movie COVEN for supporting this channel on Patreon and welcome our newest members, Zachary Bird and Brandon Meacham. Little known fact, Zachary Bird is also Canadian Jason over on Horror Addicts. Yeah, this channel's supported by Canadian Jason, y'all! If you like this video, please hack that thumbs up button, and for more gory goodness, subscribe and ring that bell. And until we meet again, blessed be.